Chicago Bulls fans, you found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Zach LaVine and DeMar Derozan reportedly being untouchable in trade talks with the Chicago Bulls. We're also going to ask, where exactly is this Bulls team headed if they keep this core intact? We'll get into all that and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily podcast on the Chicago Bulls, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls. Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls and Chicago Bears Central. I'm holding down the fort alone today with Pat the Designer being out. I decided to go live because, hey, why not? Nonetheless, good morning, everyone, and we are here on Locked On Bulls. We're going to talk about this team as we do every day. And first up, I want to talk about Chicago Bulls have deemed that DeMar Derozan and Zach LaVine are untouchable in trade talks. And so we knew that the Bulls were going to be focusing on continuity this season, right? That's what the theme of this offseason was continuity. This team basically ran it back with the additions of Goran Dragic and Andre Drummond and Dalen Terry. Outside of that, this team is largely the exact team that it was last season. And so, with that role in continuity, one of the things that this team wanted to see was that this team play better. The coaching staff coached this team better. Just a year of the same team being together. How do you better utilize and better play together after having more familiarity with this team? And so it hasn't been the success that many fans hoped it would be. I'm sure it hasn't been the success that AK and Eversley thought that it would be either. The Bulls sit now considerably under 500. And so this has naturally led to a lot of conversation amongst Bulls fans of, all right, should this team blow it up? How good is this core together? We know, we've talked about here on Locked On Bulls several times, how this team has a net negative rating when their big three are on the court together, and that's Nikola Vucevic, DeMar Derozan, and Zach LaVine. So, with the conversations of blowing it up, which, I don't want to say it was all generated by that Bill Simmons little clip that he of trade speculation, even though all those trades were horrible that he presented. But, it has now stirred up the conversation amongst Bulls fans of should this team blow it up. And a lot of fans does seem like, and it may be a small vocal part of the Bulls community, but seem like they're in favor of possibly blowing up this team. In that, we've gotten word that DeMar Derozan and Zach LaVine are untouchable. And it just makes me want to talk about it from this aspect, right? DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Pat said it on last episode, which was a great point, is that have we ever really seen them be hugely successful with DeMar and Zach on the court? Last year with the COVID injuries, it was either Zach or DeMar. I pushed back on that a little bit from Pat because we did start off the last season with Zach and DeMar being the highest scoring duo in the NBA before Zach went down with injury, and that was before COVID, things like that. This team looked really good. So, I don't have as many fit concerns with DeMar DeRozan and did I say Kobe with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine playing together. I do think that they can play together. I think that they're friendly. They enjoy each other. We all know that. They also have made comments, after last game, just saying that they have to be the ones to rally the team, that it starts with them. Zach LaVine saying that they have pride. They talk every day. They watch film together every day. But at the end of the day, it's this, right? The biggest barrier of if you're successful in the NBA is wins. This team is not getting wins. When you look back to after the All-Star break this year till the beginning of this season, the start of the season, the Bulls sit right now 5 games under 500. It's simple. Something's not working here, right? Something is not working. We'll talk about what this team can do if this team stays intact, but that has raised the question of should Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan be untouchable? For considerable improvement from this team, right? For the influx of talent that this team surely does need, should Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan, at least should they be entertaining talks with them? I've said it before. Again, I'm presenting this conversation as a think piece, and I want to hear from you guys on this one as well. But at the end of the day, it's this, right? The Bulls aren't trading Zach LaVine. You have a player that just signed a max contract that's at the beginning of that max contract, had off-season knee surgery, hasn't looked himself, shooting one of the lowest percentages from the field in his career so far, it's going to be real hard to move that contract. No contract in the NBA is unmovable. Let's be clear here. There is not a single contract that's unmovable. You may not get everything that you want, like, or hope that you are set out to get when you trade a player like Zach LaVine this early on. But the Zach LaVine thing, I don't think it's happening. It's the Bulls aren't moving on from Zach LaVine, especially not to keep DeMar DeRozan, who's over 30, 1 year left on the contract, a very limited player. Amar DeRozan, because he plays no D. It's hard to build a team around that. Now, the flip side of that, should the Bulls be interested or looking at potentially moving DeMar DeRozan if it means drastically improving this team, whether it is through draft stock? This Bulls team does not own their own first-round pick this year. We could be having one come in from Portland. We do own our own pick in 2024. We lose the pick in 2025 to the Spurs, and then we have our own picks from 2026 to 2030. We own our own first-round picks up until that point. We still owe a second-round pick as well due to the tampering with Lonzo Ball, meaning that even if the Bulls do trade and acquire a second-round pick, our very next available second-round pick, we have to give up because of the tampering case for Lonzo Ball. So, there has been this concept amongst Bulls fans of trade them while they have the most trade value, right? Is the potential that you could move DeMar DeRozan to a team right now and get something considerable back? And here's my question with that. For the people that think that DeMar DeRozan should not be untouchable, I understand. Let me be clear here. It's one of those situations where I think you guys are crazy or anything for thinking, hey, maybe the Bulls should look to move DeMar. I do think that it's way too early in the season to make that decision. I do think that as this team continues going forward to the season, as we get closer to that trade deadline, anything could be open, right? I fight back against this team is not going to blow it all up. Contrary to what some Bulls fans may want or think this team needs, this team is not going to blow it all up, quote unquote, anytime soon. So if that's your hope, get off that. Now, it is a potential that as we get closer to the trade deadline and this team continues to struggle, if this team continues to be 500, they could look to do some things. And the question is that what would you necessarily get back? Well, I'm eliminating the talk for Zach LaVine because I just don't think that's realistic. It's not moving. They're not happy. It's not happening, right? Now, the DeMar thing, I still don't think that that's happening at all. Let me be clear here. I think if any player out of this core is likely to be moved, is going to be Nikola Vucevic as he's an expiring contract. But for the nature of this conversation and the thing that came out about DeMar and Zach being untouchable, I want to talk about this, right? What could you potentially get back from DeMar DeRozan? And the reason why that deal may not be as favorable as some Bulls fans are thinking is that if you move on from DeMar, it's not like it's going to be a rebuilding team that's going to give you a high future lottery pick for DeMar DeRozan, who, again, over 30 years old, 1 year left on his deal. More than likely, if you move DeMar, it's going to be to a contending team or a team that's near contention, and that DeMar DeRozan pushes them over into getting into the playoffs. And so with that being said, then you're looking at another pick outside of the lottery, right? And I doubt you're going to get multiple first back for DeMar DeRozan. That's just not going to happen. You may not even get a first back for DeMar outright, but I do think that right team, right situation, you definitely can, right? So you got to look at the standpoint from the Bulls. If they do not move on from DeMar, if they do decide to remove that untouchable label from DeMar DeRozan, what really could they get back that's going to considerably help this team? And it's not a lot, people. Even if it was, let's say the Lakers did want DeMar, right? Who are you going to get back from DeMar? The Russell Westbrook's contract, the contracts don't match. And if you give up Vooch and DeMar for Russell Westbrook and a pick that's not going to come into 2027, that's foolish. That's short-sighted. Your Bulls are going to struggle for years to come. So while I know some Bulls fans aren't necessarily happy, and I can understand that with the thing that came out about DeMar and Zach being untouchable, you got to kind of understand it from the standpoint that you're not getting much back for them. Even if you do get a first-round pick, it's not going to be a lottery pick. It's not going to be anything that's necessarily going to just up this stock and push this team into being a championship contender. And that's what is kind of so frustrating about where this team sits at right now, right? We are middle of the pack. One of the worst things to be, especially in NBA, with lottery odds and stuff like that, is middle of the pack. The Bulls aren't bad enough to get a top 4 pick. At least not the way that it shapes up right now. They're not good enough to really go on a considerable playoff run. They're not good enough for that either. The Bulls right now sit at the middle of the pack, but they sit at the middle of the pack with a bunch of other teams in their conference right now. Really, I know that the Bulls season has sucked so far, and it sucked to see. The Bulls are 9-14, have a 39 win percentage right now. But get this, the Bulls are technically only less than 3 games back from being the 7th seed where the Philadelphia 76ers are. They're 3.5 games back from being the 6th seed, and that's out the play-in tournament. So, yes, it's a lot of teams in the middle of the pack right now, technically, in the Eastern Conference. You look at the Washington Wizards, 11-13. They're going to be missing Bradley Beal, probably going to drop some. Miami Heat, 11-13. Toronto Raptors, 12-12. Philadelphia 76ers, 12-12. Brooklyn Nets, 13-12. It is not outside the realm of possibility that if this team does improve, whether that be internally, or externally, by going out and maybe moving some of your pieces to get a better player in, or to kind of balance out this roster more, which we know this is an unbalanced roster, this team isn't far off possibly from getting back into that. Now, again, that has to show through play. Their play has been less than aspired. We can talk all day about the wins against the people. Like, Bulls fans right now are really sticking to that wins against the Bucks, wins against the Celtics, and I understand it because there were some bright spots in that. And if the Bulls can kind of turn this around, if they can do some work internally, if they can fix some things, you can easily see this team getting back into playoff contention, but that still raises the question over where we're going next, and that is, what is this team doing? What's the highest this team can go if they keep this core intact? And that's what we're going to get into next. But first, before we end this segment, I got to talk to you guys about Prize Picks. How does Prize Pick works? You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will go to score more or less than the Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sports that you watch. This includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGF, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, every single sport that you can imagine, you can do Prize Picks entries on. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's just that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. You download the Prize Picks apps, go to prizepicks.com, sign up today, and play Fantasy Daily Sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for instant deposit match of up to $100. Now, we do want to thank you for making Locked On Bulls your first listen every day. For a second listen, go and check on Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter to the biggest sports in sports. Go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right. So the next question that remains to be answered with this Chicago Bulls team is exactly how far can this team go with their core being intact, right? If the Bulls do decide to stand packed, still double down on the bet on continuity, keep this team together, just how far can this team go if that was the case? And so while I understand that a lot of fans and me and Pat, everybody can be so locked in on the right now, right? In just this moment. And this moment sucks. Where we are right now as a team, as an organization, it sucks right now because we deserve better. The city of Chicago deserves better. Bulls Nation, that is widespread across the world, deserves better than what this team is putting forth. And so when you look at the core of this team, if they were to keep that intact, how far can this team realistically go? We were a first-round exit last season. We made additions of Goran Dragic, Andre Drummond seemed to, weirdly enough, kind of fallen out of the rotation. Even though, and the Bulls lately have been a net negative. I think it's like negative 14 points when Drummond's on the board. Don't quote me on that direct number. I don't have it up in front of me. But they've been a net negative as far as differential when Drummond's been on the court since he returned to his injury. So there is something into that. As much as fans, we do think, and Drummond, I think, should be given the right to play outside of it. Again, Billy Donovan's trying to figure out some things to kind of bring some different energy to this team. I do think Drummond is going to show and prove his continued worth, and he's going to get back in that rotation. But just how far can this team realistically go with this core intact? One of the biggest things that this team was betting on with that continuity bet, right, was that, and AK said it, was that they hoped for development from Ayo Dosunmu, Patrick Williams, or Kobe White. None of those players have made the necessary leaps to really push this team into being able to be looked out outside of what they did last season. This team has gotten worse than last season as far as the win up to last season at this point to this season at this point. Kind of is what it is. We do see the path where this team can improve, at least most of us do, if you're kind of a calm down, realistic fan. But it at the end of the day is this, right? And this is what I want to say. When you bet on continuity, you do need leaps. Patrick Williams has not made the necessary improvement. The shooting that he does, let me not say he's made no improvement. We have seen Patrick Williams not be as reluctant to shoot as what he has. But again, it seems like now to me, and this is just me being fair in my judgment of Patrick Williams, is that it almost seems like Patrick Williams thinks because I'm shooting more, that means that I'm showing the aggression. He's not. Aggressiveness is more than just shooting. But with that being said, has this team, as I spit on my mic, unfortunately, has this team even put those players in the necessary position to really increase their role, to develop? That's been my biggest gripe with Billy Donovan. Pat has pushed back on it some, and that's fair, right? We don't always agree, and not everybody's going to agree with me that's listening to this either. But when I look at this, I think that if you knew the continuity bet, and part of that continuity bet was your young players were going to have to step up into larger roles, has this team necessarily put those players in position to really grow, right? That's been my biggest issue with Billy Donovan. I know DeMar has been amazing at times. I know Zach LaVine his shooting has been questionable this season. Hopefully this game against Sacramento Kings was a building block to Zach LaVine improving the season. But always a big part of our future is going to be, not DeMar, it's going to be either Patrick Williams, Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White, Dalen Terry, some of these players really showing that they can grow into near star status. We haven't seen even the surface of that. Ayo Dosunmu has shown some, especially defensively as a two-way player, but again, as a point guard, he's looked the best to me when he's allowed to push the pace, when he's allowed to do some of the things that Lonzo Ball did. When Lonzo Ball was out there, he was allowed to push the pace. He still didn't run a lot of the half-court offense. We know, talked about it, why that does go through DeMar. Not necessarily that I agree with it, but we did diagnose why Billy Donovan runs the offense in that way. But you have not put the ball in these players' hands. We've talked about it. I've given you the stats. Patrick Williams, most fourth overall picks, initially when they come into the league, they're getting 14 to 20 shots per game because usually they're going to bad teams. Patrick Williams has gotten 7 shots a game for his career. He's averaging 8 shots per game this season, so he's getting one more shot. Shout out to Patrick Williams for that. But when Patrick Williams does get over double-digit shot attempts, he nearly averages 18 points per game. So the question is this, right? If that continuity bet was part of that was going to be you needed to see development from these younger players, I then have to question, has Billy Donovan put these younger players in a position to really develop? DeMar DeRozan, very ball dominant. It is what it is. Zach LaVine, very ball dominant. It is what it is. And not to necessarily blame these players for the type of players that they are, because the Bulls knew what type of players that they had when they tried to build this roster. But as a coaching staff, and even with Ayo and Pat moving to the bench, they still have gotten the same amount of looks that they got when they were in the starting lineup. So the question that I have to this is, if that development is going to be a big part of it, you have not necessarily taken your lumps and giving these players opportunities to develop in that area. So with this core and what it is, the original question at the head and top of this segment was, where are the Chicago Bulls going if they keep this core intact? It's a difficult question to answer because even if you keep the core intact, it's how you use that core. Vooch, right? I've talked a lot about the younger players. Vooch, we know he's better when he's operating from inside out. They do not give Vooch the number of touches down low that a player that can score the way that he can deserves. Vooch even, right? I'd have to bring up the numbers to see exactly, but there are times where Vooch is only getting 8 to 10 shots per game. And then still, even then, 3 or 4 of those are out in the 3-point range. Now, some of that's on Vooch, some of that's on the coaching staff. I have an issue, and I know that the Billy Donovan decision and the extension there has been a big question for the Chicago Bulls, right? For the Chicago Bulls fans of extending Billy Donovan. Did it get done too early? And I have to question this, right? Is that when you can have a roster of the talent all day, if you don't use that roster to the best of their ability, it's hard. That's why when fans were talking about coaching changes, and a lot of Bulls fans' response was, okay, who are you going to get better that's better than Billy Donovan? It's not necessarily that, right? Outside of, like I've said before, if this Bulls team does ever move on from Billy Donovan, I want to see them build the next great head coach. I don't want to see them go after a big name. But sometimes just a change of mindset and philosophy, you can get more out of a roster because every coach has their own philosophies. Every coach has their own way that they visualize using these players. And I have an issue with the way that a lot of these players on this team are being used. Now, that can change. But the thing that I've always had a problem with this team, and that's with Zach, that's with DeMar, that's with Vooch, that's with Billy Donovan, and I'm also going to put AK out there as well, right? Those 5 pieces of the Chicago Bulls franchise say the right thing every single time you put a mic in their face. But it rarely translates to something visual and tangible. I try to mix 2 words. Visual and tangible on the basketball court. If you just listen to Billy Donovan in press conferences, he will have you thinking he's the best coach in the NBA because he says all the right things. If you listen to Zach LaVine said, even saying, oh, we got pride. We watch tape every day. We do this. All right, that's cool. You watch tape, but I can't tell you're doing that when I see you on the court. DeMar says the right thing every single time. But what does DeMar do? 8 dribbles, 5 pump fakes, and tries to get to the free throw line while also playing terrible defense. DeMar DeRozan plays terrible defense. So when you hear these entities, and AK, he says the right things. We need to add shooting and size and rim protection. What did you do? You didn't add any shooting or rim protection. You added a really good defensive center in Andre Drummond and really good rebounding center, I should say, in Andre Drummond. You added Goran Dragic, who has played way better than what I thought he was going to play. But then you still haven't, the lip service of this team has to stop. It has to stop. I almost don't care what they say anymore. I don't care what Zach LaVine says in post-game pressers. I don't care what DeMar DeRozan says in post-game pressers. I don't care what Billy Donovan says. I don't care what AK says. If it's not translating to wins and play on the court, all that is for naught. You can say I have this saying, and I say this all the time. You can fix your mouth to say anything. But if the results don't match with what you say, what the words that come out of your mouth, it was all pointless. This team gives a lot of empty words. A lot of empty words. A lot of it. And again, that goes to AK as well. AK is no longer, last season I was all AK we trust. I trust this team is going to do the right thing. I trust this front office is going to do X, Y, Z. That's gone. You got to show me. You have to show me. I'm like Ben Mathurin. You're going to have to show me. And right now, the coaching staff, the players, the front office, all they've given me is words. Those words ain't translated to a damn thing that has improved this team. And that's the biggest issue with this. We got a lot of people that talk. A lot of people that talk. Listen, I talk crap about the armchair GMs. Right now, AK is doing a lot of things the same fans that are in these YouTube comments are saying. They're giving us good words. It sounds good. It sounds effortless. But when you actually see it in practice on the court, when you actually see it in the improvement of this roster, AK has said how much he sees the potential in Patrick Williams. And I understand that when you draft somebody, you need to believe that. I want AK to believe in that potential of Patrick Williams. But it doesn't seem like the coaching staff believes in the play of Patrick Williams and the potential of Patrick Williams when they're not using him. There is no, Steve-O, great comment. There is no more grace for this team, period. There is no more grace for it. There's no more grace for the coaches. There's no more graces for the players. There's no more graces for the front office. I don't care what you did in Denver anymore, AK. You are now the president of basketball operations for my team. You are the president of basketball operations for one of the most storied franchises in NBA history. You are now the president of basketball operations for a fan base that has been striving and thirsty for wins and a solid team for 25 years. And all you have given us is a bunch of trades your first year, giving up a bunch of first-round picks, and a bunch of lip service. You traded for Nikola Vucevic, and then you allowed your head coach to use Nikola Vucevic in the same way he was using Wendell Carter. We gave up 2 first-round picks, 3 first-round picks technically, and Wendell Carter for a player that you're going to use the exact same way you used Wendell Carter for, and he's capable of more than that. So you can make all the moves, but if we hear about this alignment with the front office and the coaching staff, I wish I could see it. I don't see no alignment because the way that this coaching staff uses the players that AK says are building blocks for the future, they don't seem like building blocks. They don't seem like building blocks to the future for me. You're not using them as building blocks for the future. There's no more grace for the Chicago Bulls team. None. Shout out to Steve-O for the great quote there. No more grace for the Chicago Bulls team. Now, with that said, this is supposed to be the last segment. We got 5 minutes left in the episode, so I'm going to give it to you like this. The December 15th date is important in the NBA for a couple of reasons. The players that were signed to deals in the offseason are now eligible to be traded as of December 15th. We're 9 days away from that. That is when, if you notice, the moves around the NBA have been really quiet. And typically that is because teams are still evaluating, still looking, but you then can trade any player, basically, after that December 15th date. While I don't think the Bulls are necessarily going to look to move Dragic, look to move Drummond, but it still opens up more things. You're less restricted in the deals that you can do. My question is this. Is that should the Bulls be looking to make a considerable, still, the blow it all up? No. Blowing it all up is stupid. You don't get no grace for that. Y'all don't get no grace for that either. If you in this comment, blow it all up because of the Bills, like Chicago Bulls fans got to stop with the sheep mindset. Every single season we do this, right? There's a rumor the Bulls could look to make a trade for Jeremy Grant. All Bulls fans, we need Jeremy Grant. Oh, the Bulls could be interested in Miles Turner. Bulls fans, we need Miles Turner. Bill Simmons comes out with this trade, these dumb trade ideas for the Lakers. Now all of a sudden, oh, we need those Lakers 2 picks. That's what we need to do. We need to make a trade with the Lakers. Stop being sheep. But with that being said is this. If the Bulls do look to make a move, it's probably going to come after this December 15th date, between then and the trade deadline. And while I still don't think the Bulls are going to blow it all up, I'm still very against that. That's not going to happen. They're not blowing it all up. As we continue to be under 500, this team could absolutely look to move a Nikola Vucevic who's an expiring contract. The team can absolutely look to package Vooch, Kobe White, or whatever else to do that, but to improve this team. And this is going to be how telling AK and Eversley are, how stubborn they are with this continuity thing. And that's, again, this is dependent on if things don't improve. The Bulls play home against the Washington Wizards. For all I know, the Bulls can somehow find their magic and win the next 5 games and run the table. And then we're having a completely different conversation around the Chicago Bulls if they do that. At that point, they win 5 games in a row, they're 500. But the Bulls have lost, 10 out of their last 14 games, something like that? The Bulls would have to go on a considerable run winning-wise of the similar way that they've lost lately to turn this season around. If that happens, take everything I just said about trades, possibilities, throw it out the window. But if this team continues to struggle in the manner that they did, you cannot make an excuse for continuity. You cannot make an excuse for keeping this core intact for a team that is, if they're under 500 by the trade deadline. And I know a lot of Bulls fans are going to make, but we can be the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics turn their season around. How many people said that the Boston Celtics, all that, I don't care. The Boston Celtics had a younger core of 2 players that are both two-way players and killers on offense and defense. And they had a much better roster construction than what the Bulls have overall right now. So with that being said, throwing the Boston Celtics comparison, because I know it's coming, out of the way. If this team does not improve by the end of December, going into January, moving towards that trade deadline, this front office has to look at something. If they are as serious as what they said, AK talked about how important it is to getting a championship back to the city of Chicago. I can't do no more lip service. You can gaslight a fan base all you want. But at the end of the day, it's all proven on the court. If you continue to try to gaslight the Chicago Bulls fan base, I tell you what, it's not going to go well for you. Ask Gar Pax. It may take a while because Jerry Reinsdorf is stubborn. We may struggle through another decade, but at some point, you got to show us. At some point, you have to show us. It's time to show and prove for the Chicago Bulls team. And that is on the players, that's on the coaching staff, that's on the front office, that's on everybody in that organization. Let's throw in ownership on top of that. If improvement is not shown in some shape, form, whatever it takes to get that improvement, if it's not shown at some point, then everybody who's calling for this team to blow it all up, you're just giving them more fuel to the fire. AK and Eversley have to step up. Zach LaVine, DeMar Derozan, Nikola Vucevic, every player on that locker room has to step up. Billy Donovan, the coaching staff, has to step up. We're tired of struggling. We did this with Gar Forman And John Paxson, we're tired of it. I'm sorry, whether it's fair or unfair, you came in after one of the worst front offices in history. And so you now, are right or wrong, are carrying the weight of that as well. You did some things right away that made us think that it was going to be good. But at the end of the day, the toll always has to be paid. And the lip service, the time for lip service is done for the Chicago Bulls team. That's my time for today. I thank you guys for joining me and joining my TED Talk. You guys can follow me at CEO Haize. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bulls your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. For Pat the Designer, even though he's not here, this has been Locked On Bulls. I'm Haize. I love you guys, man. We'll see you guys tomorrow for the prediction show as the Bulls face the Washington Wizards. Love you guys, man. Peace, y'all.